In this example, we're going to be describing the shape of each distribution. Then we'll match the histogram to its corresponding box plot. So by shape, we mean whether it's symmetric or not, and if it's not, it's going to be skewed left or right. And then what we're going to do is we're going to also describe the modality, which is how many humps or bumps the data seems to have. So for this one, we're going to describe this first one, it's a special one, as a uniform. There really aren't any, there's no modality to this one, there's no ups and downs. So this one's just uniform. Uniform implies symmetry. If we were to draw a vertical line right through the middle, the left side would look like the right side. With graph 2, we can kind of see a situation where the data is lumped over here to the right, but the outlier might be over here to the left. This data is not symmetric. It's actually skewed left. We skew towards the tail, and by the tail I mean if I were to draw like a kind of a smooth curve between these, and this is like a tadpole or something, the tail would be over here like a bird, I don't know. The tail would be over here to the left. And so we're skewing towards the outliers here. This is definitely skewed left. The modality is going to be unimodal. So even though we don't see one defined hill, we do see like half of one right here, and that's okay. This next set of data, if we drew a vertical line, it would split the data evenly. So this one is symmetric, and it is also unimodal. There's just one bump or one hump. This data, if we were to draw kind of a smooth curve to fit this one here on the right hand side, that's where the skew is. So this one is skewed right, definitely not symmetric, and it's also unimodal. This next one's a little bit funky. These could be considered outliers over here. So with the outliers, it's skewed right and unimodal, bimodal. Bimodal meaning there's two humps, so there would be one and then a little one too. And then if there isn't an outlier, you could say that this is roughly symmetric. And then also it'd be unimodal. So it depends on whether you want to include those outliers or not. This data set here looks like it's symmetric and then also unimodal. Let's see if we can figure out which one is which. So I'm going to take a look at this, these box and whisker plots, and I'm going to look for something that looks uniform to me. Uniform has great symmetry and no outliers really, so this one wouldn't make sense. I think it's going to be B for this. So this one's B. This one's skewed, kind of symmetric. This one has some outliers over here. So I think that's going to be B. For this one, for number 2, we can see that the tail is to the left. There's a lot of data to the right. There might be some outliers to the left, but this whisker is going to be long. So if we look at these, we can see that we got B is done. This is roughly symmetric with a few outliers to the right. That's not this one. This one's skewed left. The outliers would be on the left. Skewed right here. And again, I'm looking at the length of the whisker. And then if we look down here a little bit, we find D is skewed left. And that I think is going to be the correct one for number 2. So number 2 is D. If we look at 3, it appears most of the data is right in the middle. We have a couple possible outliers here on the left and the right. And the IQR, or where 50% of the data is probably going to be right here within a narrow range. So if we look, we see this box and whisker plot right here, F, has a couple outliers on each side, and also most of the data is clustered in between these two values right there. So we're going to list this one as F. Moving on, we could take a look at number 4 here. This is definitely skewed right, and there may or may not be some outliers. If we take away these outliers, it's still skewed right. So let's take a look and see if we can figure that out. Wouldn't be this one. There are some outliers to the right, but I don't know. The rest of the data is not symmetric even if we take it out. So I think this one's going to be C. C here has a long tail to the right. There's really no outliers over here. The median is all the way over here on the left-hand side, which is corresponding to where most of the data is, so the median would split the data into 2 equal halves. So I think this one here is going to be C. 5 has a few outliers on the right. If we look at our box and whisker plots or our box plots, we can see A has those outliers on the right hand side. So this one's going to be A. Let's see if 6 makes sense for E. E is roughly symmetric, okay, and the whiskers are roughly symmetric there, and the data is lumped right here in between maybe these two values. So yeah, this one does make sense for E.